So you want to design a magic spell, but you don't know where to start. The only thing gatekeeping you should be the limitation of your imagination. In most cases, you don't even need a lot to get started. I'm just going to be using my phone and Logic Pro X. If you're on a budget, I highly recommend checking out Audacity as it's free and it's quite powerful for what it is. Cool. So let's start. When I think of a spell sound, I think of two main ingredients: a low-end whoosh with a high-end sparkle. For the whoosh, just swipe your hand on things. Experiment. The heavier the material, the lower the whoosh. For a nice charging sparkle sound, take any writing utensil and just start making circles. The faster the circles, the faster the charging. Once you're happy with your recordings, you can bring them into your DAW. Trim them up, and layer them. Cool, so now that they're layered, what do we do next? Let's clean it up with EQ. For this, my thought process is cleaning up the harshness on the high end, while also beefing up the bottom end. Try to take the less is more approach when using an EQ. A great 1-2 punch combo for sound design is EQ and compression. For this sound effect, we're going to use compression to add some weight. Use the threshold and ratio knobs to determine the weight, while using the attack and release knobs to set how present that weight is. Cool, so it's cleaned up, it's got some weight, now let's give it some movement. You could do this with an EQ by just taking any node and swiping it across the spectrum. Go low to high, high to low, why not both? Now that we're at this part of the mixing process, it's time to put down the gain-based effects and pick up some cool time-based effects to dress it up a bit more. Remember, reverb defines the space, so don't go too crazy with it. Instead of defining the space, we're just going to use it to add some depth, essentially turning our 2D sound, left and right, into a 3D sound, left, right, and forward. And finally, we're going to add a phaser to the sound. By adding a phaser, we're going to accent the movement we've created with the EQ earlier. Cool. So, what about elements? Let's layer some elements over our spells to make elemental spells. Let's start with fire. Like before, we're going to break this up into two sounds, a low-end rumble and a high-end sizzle. For the rumble, you can just blow into your mic. For the sizzle, splash some water on a heat element. Here's what I got when I layered these sounds. Just like before, we're going to use EQ to clean it up a bit. Notice how I use the high and low cuts to really define where the sound should sit. You can start off by soloing each element and tweaking them individually before tweaking them together. Now let's get that fire really burning with some distortion. Just like the original spell sound, we're going to use EQ to create some more movement. Here's how it sounds layered with the original spell. Electric. Just like the sounds before, we're going to break it into two sounds, a strike and sparks. Tearing heavy-duty tape is perfect for a strike sound, while Velcro is great for a nice crackle. Here's how it sounds layered. Just like before, we're going to use EQ to clean up our sound and divide it into highs and lows. This time, instead of just using the high cut, we're going to use a combination of that and a high shelf. The reason being, we want to cut some highs without completely eliminating all the characteristics. Next, we can apply some distortion. This is going to help accent the crackle and add a bit of power. At this point, we're done with our gain-based effects, and we can play around with some time-based effects. Let's choose a flanger. I find that flangers are really good at creating electric type sounds as well as laser type sounds. Finally, what would a thunder sound be without it breaking the sound barrier? We can kind of emulate this using a delay. Here's how it sounds layered with the spell. Water. Just like before, let's break it up into two sounds. A low-end rumble with a high-end splash. This one might be a little self-explanatory, but fill up your tub and start splashing around. I found that dumping a cup of water was great for a nice rumble. Here's how it sounds layered. The splash impact to me sounds a little too wimpy. So we're going to do something we haven't done in this video yet and use pitch to add weight. Pitch is such an important tool for a sound designer, to the point it's a little criminal that you had to wait this long for me to use it. We can use different pitch amounts on individual tracks to really add depth. We're in the home stretch. Let's add some EQ for movement. Finally, we're going to add some distortion to the impact just to add that last bit of power. Here's how it sounds with the spell. Fantasy games today have rich stories and test your strategic ability. That feeling when you unlock a game-changing spell makes you feel strong. Sure, that magic ability might do max damage, but why does it feel powerful? Ultimately, a video game is a bunch of ones and zeros to lay down a concept, but it's the artwork and sound design that dress up the numbers to create immersion. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video, and I hope you can take one thing away and apply it to your own work. I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, as it motivates me to create better and informative content. And that's it. Happy sound designing!